Everyone. This is our continuing education program for March. This program was actually going to be not 1 year ago, so we got hit with COVID. So today we're very happy to welcome Savannah Pearl, her assistant Carol Jeremiah, to answer some questions. There's a whole page of questions that they'll answer, and any more that you can possibly think of. Savannah Pearl was raised in Lakeview, Iowa, and then graduated from BMAC in mortuary science, BMAC from Anthony, mortuary science, and she's been with Adams Funeral Home for several years now. And Savannah, I'll let you introduce Carol. And if you both come on up, you can take over the microphone.
We good? We use both? Yeah. Okay. On the Zoom? Yeah, you can just work. And the last one for the audience. Okay. We'll get it all figured out.
Hi, everyone. My name is Savannah Proyle, and I'm the pre-arrangement specialist at Adams and Soderstrom Funeral Home. I've got here with me my manager from Minnesota, Carol Jeremiah. To start off with, I just wanted to tell you a little bit of background on myself. Like Jerry said, I went to school at DMAC and graduated in 2017 from the Mortuary of Science and did my internship with Adams Funeral Home, where I found very fast that I had more passion in the arranging room rather than on the other side of things. And so when the pre-arrangement department had this position available, I immediately jumped on it. So I'm very excited to be here today with all of you and all of you on Zoom today. I've asked Carol to share a little bit about herself and her background with pre-arranging and a little personal story that I think will help a lot of you guys today understand the importance of pre-arranging. So Carol.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting us here today. You have a beautiful facility and this is a gorgeous room. So you are this is just wonderful. We really appreciate that you've opened up time for us. Savannah asked me to come down. I manage numerous funeral homes. My background is I have been in the funeral industry 22 years and primarily in the pre-arrangement, pre-funding department. I've helped out at numerous funeral homes. I'm licensed in Minnesota and Iowa. And so I've had the privilege of working with Savannah and the Adams Funeral Homes and all of their 6 locations. Savannah asked me to come down today to just share, sorry, it's my invisible face. We're all getting used to these Zooms, you guys. We've spent a year of Zooming, and let me tell you, we are not gonna, I just wanna do a side note, we're not gonna drag this out today. Because it does, when you're in front of that screen, as I've experienced for a whole year, you get to a point where you want to throw the screen out the window, okay? So we're going to make this interactive and get you as much information as we can as quickly as possible. But Savannah asked me to share my story because I do have a little bit of a unique story, even being in the business 20 years. I lost both of my parents in the last year to a year and a half. I lost my father right before COVID, and I lost my mom right in the middle of COVID. And so even being in the industry for 20 years, it was a huge wake-up call. It was very much a personal experience that I really started realizing that I really need to share with people coming into pre-arranging. My word for 2021 is bold. And the reason that I have chosen that word this year is I am boldly telling everyone how important it is to pre-arrange and pre-fund your funeral. I've been talking about this for 20 years, but in living through it in the last year has been really eye-opening for me. Okay, so both of my parents were pre-arranged, of course. I'm in the business, they had no choice. I pre-arranged them both 15 years ago. I am so thankful I did, folks. In 2013, my mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. As she progressed through it, my dad took over more and more. He was a phenomenal caregiver. But in 2019, going into 2020, he developed dementia. His cancer came back and he had a massive stroke. Okay. So he ended up passing away before my mom. Okay. Being in the business, somehow we think that maybe we know a little bit more. Well, let me tell you, none of us know what's going to happen when. All we can do is be prepared. Again, so thankful we were. So luckily we had the pre-arrangements done. My dad's funeral was large. My parents were very active in their community, very active in their church, very well known in their circle of friends. They had moved into a senior campus like yourselves, beautiful place like this. And so when it came time for my dad's funeral, we knew all the answers because sadly at that point, my mom was not able to help us at all. Matter of fact, she was not even aware that my dad passed away. She just knew somebody important was gone. So it was up to my brother and sister and I to go through the funeral. We had all the wishes written down, the pallbearers, the casket, the vault, the scripture verses, the hymns. Everything was done and all the money was there. We didn't have to worry about anything because, as you know, with my dad passing away, my mom became the estate, even though she was mentally incapacitated, which in turn dropped it down to us kids. So we went through my dad's funeral. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. It was sad because my mom was not able to be there. Then we move along to last June, and on June 20th, my mom passed away. We were not able to go see her because of COVID, and this whole new word of COVID and pandemic came into our world, as we all know. My mom died of Alzheimer's, but several days before her death, she did test positive for COVID. So we were not even able to go in and say goodbye. So that also was another big reality check, and another way that I've gotten bold, and Savannah can attest to this. I am boldly really encouraging funeral homes to really step up their grief support and aftercare programs for our families. Because not only was I not able to say goodbye to my mom, but a 300-person funeral for my dad became a 30-person funeral for my mom. Now, again, thank heavens she was pre-arranged because she had no voice anymore. But we were able to do a beautiful funeral for her. It became what we had not even heard of in the industry as a walk-through visitation. We had no big church service, but we did her favorite hymn, instead of being played on the big church organ, was played on a guitar by my cousin at the graveside. So we still were able to do everything she wanted, the same pallbearers, the same casket, the same vault. We had a visitation in a different capacity. My brother and sister and I greeted people out in the parking lot of the funeral home rather than inside a building. God blessed us with a beautiful sunny day. but everything became very different. But the biggest thing I can say to you, and I'm boldly saying this year especially, is get things written down. Get your wishes written down. Get things paid for. Because we entered a year, as you know, of everything being unknown. COVID came in a matter of days. My husband and I were packed to leave for Ireland the next day when President Trump shut the country down. All these things became unknown. We still don't know when it's going to end, what it's going to look like when it ends, what our new normal is, and the fact that new normal is our new normal word. I mean, how much has changed and how crazy it is. We've got vaccines from 3 different companies. I mean, so many things we don't know. But the one thing we do know, or the 2 things we do know that we've always said, is the 2 sure things in life are death and taxes, right? Okay, so we know neither of those, unfortunately, are going to go away. So the only thing you can do is be prepared for them. I was talking to Savannah about this the other day, and I had been working with a gentleman, and we were actually discussing this. Something I found really interesting too in doing this in 20 years. Something I found very interesting is we all take the time, including myself and my husband and my parents, everybody. We take the time and the effort and the money, and we go hire an attorney to make up our wills. Okay, we've all done that. We also get our financial advisors and take care of planning our retirement funds and things like that. But isn't it darn interesting that the one event that we know is for sure going to happen, it's going to be the most emotional event. You're going to be at your worst state of mind. And that is the passing of a spouse or a loved one. That's the last thing we prepare or plan or don't even prepare or plan for. That has really been a realization to me. And again, there's my word bold again, but I am really on my little soapbox nowadays saying the best thing you can do for your family, your loved ones, your spouse, your kids, get things taken care of. Because another thing that we experienced with COVID is my brother and sister and I all could not even, we're from Minnesota, so we're still buttoned up there. The other thing to know is that the 3 of us could not sit in the same room during the funeral conference. Okay, who would have ever thought that would have happened? Afterwards, we each had to go to our own homes. Family members could not come in. You did not have the support and the people bringing meals over. My sister and I have very opposite views of COVID. And so there were so many things that changed in our world that the one thing you can know and prepare and have that much control over is your arrangements, your budget, your funding. The one thing, oh, and you know what? I just saw you raise a finger. I want to let everybody know, please, if you have any questions, please speak up and ask your questions, because this is all for you. Okay. And I'll guarantee you, whatever question you have, other people will have the same question.
Now you'll be able to hear if they have a question.
Oh, awesome. Oh, great, you guys. Please feel free. And then after we answer this question, Savannah and I are going to go through that sheet of the 15 questions that was emailed to you. Yes, sir. Did you have a question? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought you did. Okay. We're going to start out with this sheet that you got. Got to get my glasses on. We're going to each take turns reading these questions and answering them for you. Please feel free to interrupt at any time. Again, this program is for you. So the first question is, what should I do first? The first thing you should do is figure out which funeral home you want to use. Savannah's here from Adams Funeral Home. They have 6 locations in 6 towns, almost under 6 different names. So there's a good chance you may see her again. But again, even though we're from Adams Funeral Home, our whole importance and the whole point that we want to make today is pick a funeral home and do something. Reach out to that funeral home. There is no cost or obligation to talk to the Savannahs out there. That is what we're here for.
Once I've chosen a trusted funeral home, what's next? Set an appointment. Now, if that appointment is with me, we can do it either at the funeral home, here, over the phone, or over a Zoom like this, whatever your comfort level is going to be.
Okay. What should I expect from my meeting with a licensed pre-need advisor? So when Savannah gets together with you, like she just said, it's really important to have an appointment. COVID really heightened all of our realization of mortality. It really heightened our awareness of all of our mortality, no matter what our age is. Savannah has been very, very, very busy. It has really spurred people to go, you know what? It doesn't matter. I mean, my husband and I have our arrangements done because you never know. And so what you need to do is set an appointment, and what you should expect out of that appointment is Savannah will provide you with materials once she has visited with you and found out what type of funeral you want. She will go over all the options available to you for the funeral and for the funding. One thing I want to point out quickly is because of COVID and how everything has changed, funerals are completely customized now, and we can do whatever you want. Even paying for your funeral, those options are now customized too, because everybody's at a different place financially.
How may I lift the bulk of the burden of my passing from my loved ones? The main thing is going to be documenting. Writing this information down. From there, what I do is I set up a file for you at our funeral home. We have a system that we enter it in. All of that information is kept there. That way, at the time of someone's passing, that very first step for our funeral directors is to turn to that pre-arrangement file cabinet and say, look, we've got something. We know what we're doing.
So pre-planning is as easy as documenting my wishes and choices. Yeah, it really is. And the beauty of it too is that you can change your mind at any time. You can call Savannah at any time. And if you have a new great grandbaby, or if somebody passes away, or if you change your mind on what you want to do, you can absolutely change that documenting. You can change your choices. And it really, truly is that easy. And again, when you meet with Savannah, there's no cost or obligation or pressure.
Tell me about pre-funding. How can I keep my loved ones from bearing the financial cost? So after documenting your wishes, the very next step is to pre-fund. Now, with the funds that we set aside, the money will be there today, tomorrow, and the day that you pass.
Does pre-funding guarantee that the cost of the items I pay for will not increase for me over time? At Adams Funeral Home, and I'm specifically saying that because each funeral home is allowed to choose whether or not they guarantee prices or not. And there are both options available everywhere, okay? So at Adams Funeral Home and all the chapels, they do guarantee prices. But the thing that people don't realize is Adams Funeral Home can guarantee the prices for the funeral services. We have no control over the costs of flowers, food, death certificates, what churches may ask for clergy, organists, soloists, lunch people, what food costs will be. All of those items change. And so we have no control over those. We can help guide you to fund enough in your account to make sure there is enough. But yes, you can guarantee the price of the funeral services. And Savannah in the appointment would go over much more in detail with you what is guaranteed and what we can, because there's just certain things we don't have a control over.
So what happens to the money I pay from now until the time of my passing? So what we do is we set up an irrevocable burial trust, and those funds stay in that trust until the time of one's passing.
If I choose to pre-fund, is there a payment plan option, or does it all have to be paid in one lump sum? What I love, and this is what I've seen really change in the last 20 years being in the industry, is Savannah can completely customize how it works for you to pay for your funeral. And again, thank heavens my parents had theirs paid, because my brother, sister, and I, all three of us were affected by COVID financially, but we didn't have to worry. We didn't have to downsize. We didn't have to cheapen my mom's funeral because of our budgets. So what's awesome is that Savannah will go over with you all the planning, the pre-planning, the pre-funding options available to you.
Is cremation a more cost-effective option than burial? So not necessarily. With cremation, it could absolutely be less. It depends on the types of services that are selected with cremation. It's very customizable, and by you pre-planning, you have all of those options to choose from.
Is there a way to protect money that is set aside for my final expenses from the healthcare industry should I need long-term care? Absolutely. And as Savannah said, these funding options are called irrevocable funeral trusts. What that means for you as a consumer is that whatever monies you put into your funeral account, it is completely and fully protected from the county, state, and nursing home. No matter what happens to you physically or financially, it is the only financial account you can have that they cannot touch. When my parents, before they passed away, they were both in memory care together. We were paying over $18,000 a month for their care. Thank heavens their funeral accounts were protected, because there's no way we could have continued at that cost. And it didn't matter because their money was there in their funerals. So no matter what happened, you're protected, that money is protected, even if you go on Title 19.
Won't my life insurance cover everything at the time of my need? So like Carol had mentioned, we do guarantee some pricing at our funeral home. So if locking in the price is something that's important to you, funeral homes don't offer to guarantee the life insurance policy. So if you say that I have a $15,000 life insurance policy, this is what I want for my services. Unfortunately, we can't lock that in. We can't guarantee that, because there's no guarantee that that life insurance policy is going to be there at the time of one's passing. A lot of times we see, and I see it on a daily basis when dealing with situations on Medicaid and Title 19. A lot of times life insurance policies are having to be surrendered because of their cash value. Cash value is counted as an asset. So truly, it is scary to try and rely on your life insurance for your funeral services.
I'm going to just piggyback on that a little bit. That is something, folks, that has changed recently.
This we know.
Probably in the last 5 to 8 years. Life insurance is no longer protected. Please
I'm gonna leave
know
that
that.
on.
If you have a life insurance policy that has cash value and you start outliving your money because of your care, the county and state can and will have you cash it in. Life insurance is not guaranteed to be there in the end. Savannah can go into more detail with you and can help you if you have questions on your life insurance. Are there benefits for me as a veteran as it relates to final expenses? First of all, I want to say, do we have any veterans in the room? Thank you so much for your service. We very much appreciate it. And yes, there are certain veteran benefits. Savannah will be able to go over that with you in detail when you sit down with her on how that affects funerals, burials, gravestones, that type of thing.
Will my policy transfer with me if I move? I think this is my favorite question. I don't know why, but when people ask me that, my answer is absolutely. This policy is set up in your name. It's yours. It goes with you wherever you go. In the event that, Jerry, you get a wild hair and you're moving to Florida, that policy is going with you. So that's the beauty of it. Usable at any funeral home in the United States.
And last question, what can I do this afternoon to take the next step toward completing my pre-planning? You can call Savannah, get it set up. Like she said, she can visit with you over the phone, over FaceTime, in person, wherever you're comfortable at the funeral home. Adams Funeral Home just built a brand new little cremation center where Savannah office is out of. There is minimal to no traffic in there, but it's gorgeous. You don't know it's a crematory. You won't see it. It's absolutely beautiful. She is a very private office. Obviously we mask, glove, whatever your comfort level is. The biggest thing is I can say to you is do something. Don't just sit back and think about it. It's not going to go away. Okay. And it's going to be a whole lot easier if you've got a spouse or a family member. It's going to be a whole lot easier to do it together with them than alone. And so call up Savannah. We're going to have information at the end here on how to reach her, and you can get an appointment set up with her. Does anybody have any questions for myself or Savannah? Yes.
Would annuities be like life insurance? If they, as far as your cash value, if you ran out of funds, they could take those.
So her question was, are annuities takeable? Yes, they absolutely love people with annuities because they are takeable. So yes, there literally is nothing protected other than an irrevocable funeral account. Everything else is takeable, sadly.
Any other questions? Comments?
Anybody over Zoom? Do any of you guys have any questions?
I think that this is just.
You could be the secret panel.
Yeah, let me, you've got the trust set up and guaranteed a particular price. What happens if you use a different funeral home that has a different price structure?
What happens if you use a different funeral home that has a different price structure?
Yeah. So can everybody hear me? Okay.
Yes, tell them what the question.
Oh,
Yeah, repeat
so
question.
the question was, you set up a irrevocable burial trust with one funeral home and you move it and they have a different price structure. Am I understanding that correct? Okay. Is that okay?
I think so.
What I can say is that I can't say that ABC Funeral Home in the next town over is going to guarantee that price. However, the funds that you have set aside is going to be put towards your services. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and so if you were moving and you were bringing your pre-arrangement over, you would sit down with that funeral home. All of your money would go with you. The other thing we both forgot to add is that in this account, you actually will be gaining interest. Now, all of us know interest is nothing to cheer about right now. But you will be getting like maybe 1 to 1.5%, which is better than 0.000, 1. But you will be gaining interest in this account and you will never be taxed on it. Okay, that's the other thing to know. But when you go over to a different funeral home with your funds, they will and should re-quote for you what their prices are. And then you can look at what your current value is and see how it matches. Now, if the death has already occurred and you have to go to a different funeral home, what they will do is they will look at what value is in that account. If it's short, you will have to pay the balance. If there's too much, you will get a refund check. The funeral home will not and cannot keep your money, okay? So if you ever think, like, for example, because we had to move my mom, we did have to switch funeral homes. And so knowing that she was in her final stages, I went to the other funeral home and we sat down and looked at the pricing. The other thing that I love about the funeral accounts that we set up for you is everything is in your name, you guys. You control your money, like Savannah has said. So at any time you can call the company and say, what is my current value? Also, at any time, Savannah will sit down with you and just do a review and make sure numbers and wishes are still jiving, things like that. Did that answer his question? I don't know what screen to look at. Okay, okay. Awesome, great question.
I think the next question, what are average and normal costs of well, it depends, you know.
Okay, so what are normal and average costs of prepaid funerals? That has gotten so different, especially this year with COVID, you guys, because everybody has different ideas of what they want to do. We have not been getting into quoting numbers in big groups just because it is so different for everybody. And so that is where, if we could really encourage you to get a hold of Savannah, again, there's no cost or obligation, but what you want might be totally different than what your neighbor wants, but you guys might not even know how different it is. And so for us to throw out 5, 10, 15,000, it could completely terrify somebody and it might not even be what you're wanting. So I'm honestly not trying to evade the question, but it's just so different for everybody. You know, like I said, Savannah's not, I mean, you can talk to her for free, you know, and she'll, you know, then we can actually give you an accurate idea of what your costs would be. Is that okay? Can we get away with that? I mean, yes.
Do you have caskets on the premises of, say, Adams Funeral Home?
Yes, we absolutely do. Yeah. Yep. So he had asked if we have caskets on display at our funeral home, and we absolutely do. Go ahead.
I assume one can cancel a funeral plan, and do they get the refund in full plus interest, or what's the policy?
Oh, that's a good question.
So within 30,
Yeah,
does it depend if it's irrevocable or revocable?
yeah, we always do. Do you want me to just take it?
Yeah.
Okay. So his question is, can you cancel your funeral plan and is it refundable? So you have because it is an irrevocable funeral trust, you do have the first 30 days to cancel it. In 20 years, I think I've had 2 people cancel and then they redid it again. But because everybody, unfortunately, we're all going to need it at some point, and it's not going to go away, and it is a protected fund and it's gaining tax-free interest. So we really, honestly, don't have people that cancel them, because the fact that you can use them anywhere now, say if I cut you off on 30 here and you don't like me anymore, you can go to another funeral home with it. So it is transferable, but you do have that first 30 days to make sure that that's what you want to do. I mean, eventually you're going to have to do it somewhere. And again, Savannah's licensed for the entire state of Iowa. So if you want to work with her, you can, but you don't even have to work with the funeral home she's with, or vice versa. You know, you can work with the funeral home or whatever you want to do. What I love about it is you're in control. This is your account. You use it where you want on whatever type of wishes you want. Did that answer your question, sir?
I don't have a question, I have a comment. Savannah sat down with Nancy and I a little over a year ago. And the things that we learned, we had never even thought of. But sitting down with Savannah helped us think about those things. And there were some questions that she asked that we couldn't answer right away. We hadn't thought about it and we needed to think about it. So it was, even without thinking about the cost, just thinking about the things you have to think about. Example, how many death certificates do you need? And where can I get a burial plot? And who do I call about that? What kind of service do I want? Do I want a funeral? Do I just want a memorial service? Do I just want cremation? Am I ashes scattered somewhere? Or what? There's just a lot of things to think about that unless you sit down and do it, it won't happen.
Very well put, Jerry. Jerry was just stressing that there's so many things to think about. And actually, you guys, there's actually 148 questions, if you do not prearrange, that you have to answer the day somebody dies. Okay, again, you've heard me say this like 5 times, but I've been in the business 20 years. My parents were both prearranged. I still was stressed that day, but it allowed me to be a daughter, not an administrator, because those things were written down. And like Jerry said, there are so many things to think about and make decisions on. Whatever you can do ahead of time is so much better. The beauty of it is you can always change your mind, but it at least gets you moving towards an initial answer. Sarah.
There's a question here from someone on Zoom. And
What are the costs?
what are the costs that can be guaranteed? Okay, so those are going to be the services of the funeral director and staff, our professional services. For example, the visitation, the embalming, the cosmetizing, the memorial service, the use of our vehicles, transportation, merchandise, the casket, the outer burial container, the urn, the memorial package, which is going to be those folders that have your order of service, the thank yous for your family, the register sign-in book, things like that. Things that we don't guarantee are considered cash advance items, or in other words, things that we have no control of. Death certificates, flowers, opening and closing of the grave, final dates, food, just honorariums to the pastor, to the musician, whether that be a pianist, organist, soloist, things like that. And does that answer your question? I think I can see her maybe on this side. And where are you at?
Yes, it does.
Oh.
I just want to,
everybody named Ann. No.
I just want to point out too that some churches help you plan the service that you could kind of do ahead of time before you go to the funeral home.
I'm sorry, what did you?
Churches can help you plan the services too. Yeah, I mean, they could absolutely help you pick out scripture and hymns and as far as different things that you would want specifically at the church. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not uncommon to sit there with the pastor from the church during the prearrangement conference.
And there's a gentleman. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Which one?
What is it to that?
Anne, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, I do. This pre-funded certificate, You mentioned it can be transferred anywhere in the state of Iowa. Can it be transferred outside of the state of Iowa?
Yes, it is usable at any funeral home in the United States. She had just asked if it could be transferred to any funeral home out of the state of Iowa.
Thank you.
Is it true that if someone passes, well, for example, on vacation that you, sorry, no, that's okay, you need to call when you, oh, read that out loud.
Okay. Is it true that if someone passes while, for example, on vacation, that you need to call where you plan on having the funeral, or you can end up having to pay basically for double or both or double? So the first place is going to be, yes, that funeral home where you want to have services, wherever home is for you. It just makes it kind of messy if you're calling multiple funeral homes. Once that phone call is made to your funeral home at home, that is where they will take it into their hands, contact the funeral home wherever you're vacationing from, and make arrangements there. It alleviates so much, like you said, finances, and it's just a lot easier for our funeral directors to take control, essentially, because they're the ones that really need to have everything in order.
You had a question back there.
What are the laws regarding embalming?
What are the laws regarding embalming? Okay, so if, for example, your family would like, or you and your family would like to have a public visitation, we would have to embalm. If we are opening up a visitation to the public, we would have to embalm. In the event that you want to be cremated, but you would like some family to view before you're cremated, we would call that a private family viewing. That is where it is limited to only a handful of close family members, and they would be able to view you unembalmed at that time. But anytime we open it up to a public visitation, an embalming has to take place. Does that answer your question? Okay. Go ahead.
Is there a time frame for that?
Yes, so we have 72 hours where we essentially need to make a decision on what we're doing. And that allows, people to come from different places in the state or out of state and whatnot.
Read that question.
I have a prepaid plan with Iowa Cremation. Can you work with them? Absolutely. So I have worked with people that have worked with cremation societies. As you know, with cremation societies, they just strictly do the cremation. They don't offer services, visitations, anything like that. So I have a few situations where I have met with people that have a cremation set up with the cremation society, but they want services. So then they pre-fund their memorial service, they pre-fund their visitation, their burial with us. And essentially, yep, we just have everything on file at the funeral home and we know what to do.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Deal with the philosophy that the funeral is more important for the surviving family than it is for the one who died. Therefore, the family may be better prepared to make the best final arrangements, knowing how many children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that you don't know if they're going to be involved. How do you deal with that philosophy that you let the kids do it?
Do you want me to take
Yeah,
that?
go ahead.
I can tell you personally. No, and you know what? I've been asked that question forever.
It depends on the relationships you got with your family too.
Amen. So his question was, how do you deal with the philosophy on people that say, I want my kids to take care of it so that they can have, what is their wishes, kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, that type of thing. So when I have a family that says to me, I want my kids to take care of it, what we have found in the industry, just first and foremost, when things are left to that day, people overspend out of emotion. Okay, so if you want to strictly look at it from a financial standpoint, a lot of times people spend more than they would have had they prearranged. And I'll tell you what, girls, daughters are notorious. They will never pick the cheapest casket for mom, even though like my dad picked the least expensive ceiling vault. Well, my mom wanted a little bit better one. She hates bugs. She wanted a thicker one. Well, then she had a certain casket picked out, and I know it had it been left up to my sister, it would have been double the price. So what I say to families is, yes, let's let your family be involved, but give us at least a basic plan of what you want. Okay, here's your cemetery plots. You want a traditional funeral at this church. Maybe let the kids have a say in 3 choices of a casket. Pick a budget that you're comfortable in. And if they want to upgrade it, tell them you can, but it'll be your cost to upgrade. Another thing too that I have people say is that, well, my kids want to plan the service part of it, like at the church. I have a lot of people that maybe their children are ministers or whatever. That is fabulous. That's not going to affect what we do as a funeral home. We're still going to bring you to the church. But I love that. That is huge in part of grief. What I tell families is, after you have gotten a good idea of what you want to do, sit down with your kids. Bring your kids into an arrangement with Savannah. Let them ask questions. I sat down with a family. There were literally 12 kids and everybody was on a different page. So the mom said, can you just sit down with my kids on a Saturday morning? I wore my jeans. I sat down in the middle of the floor. There were 12 kids and their spouses sitting around me. And I said, okay, everybody go. What is everybody's question? Now, then I said, does anybody want to know what your mom actually wants? But on the same vein, we want to make sure that we honor people's wishes, but at the same time, we need to make sure that the other family members are getting the closure. So there's kind of 2 sides to it. I will meet, and sorry, I don't mean to pick on the guys, but I'll meet with some men, and men will usually go, just, throw me in a ditch or something like that. Okay. Well, or I don't want any services. I see this guy nodding. Anyway, I had a gentleman that said, I don't want anything. And I said, okay, I can respect that. But what do you want your wife and kids to say to your siblings, to all of their friends, and to your whole church community? What are they supposed to say that your life was not even honored? It was not even acknowledged that you lived or died. What do you expect them to say? And what if your best friend died and he had told his wife, I don't want anything, and all of a sudden you hear through the grapevine, oh, so-and-so died. Well, what? I didn't even get to see his wife and say, I'm so sorry. So my philosophy on all this is talk to your family. You will have some kids that go, I don't want to know anything, and say, okay, great, we're going to get it all done. Just know it's all done. Or you will have kids, again, usually daughters, that will be very opinionated. They can come with, we love that. Because truly, you guys, that's who we're going to be working with in the end. But we are very well versed in dealing with all the family dynamics that you can come out with. And you're right, there are a lot of different family dynamics that go with that. Did that answer your question? Okay. Yes, sir.
If I am on vacation in Texas when I pass, is there a fee to bring my body back across state lines to return to Iowa for a funeral?
Yes. So, yep, there would be additional fees with that.
And would it be,
Oh.
would it be different if I were cremated on site and then the ashes returned to Iowa?
Oh, yeah, repeat the question.
So he's wondering if he was in, I believe you said Texas, right? And he passed away, would there be additional fees to have him brought to the funeral home in Ames? Yes. Now, with that being said, you had added, would it make a difference whether you were cremated on site or, of course, embalmed and brought to Iowa? Yes, it would depend on what their fee would be in Texas at the funeral home. It would matter on what your wishes were. Something to think about too is if there are people in Iowa that would want to view you before you were cremated. A lot of it would just kind of depend on the funeral home there and their fees.
I want to add quickly one thing. Oh, go ahead, sir.
What about state regulations on moving the body versus moving?
You have to be
ashes?
embalmed.
Is the fee structure different?
Right, so if we bring a body over state lines, yes,
You have
there
to
are
be
different
embalmed.
rules, you have to be embalmed, that type of thing. Anyone can carry cremains over state lines. So what we do, because like Savannah said earlier, if something would happen to you, and you're gone, you call home, call home, call home, call your home funeral home. Because when a funeral home deals with another funeral home, it is called a trade call inside our industry. Different funeral homes will help other funeral homes out at a lesser cost than if you were in Texas and your family member walked into a funeral home and said, my family member just passed away. They have to charge you normal retail prices. Where if you called home and Joe Reimers got on the phone with that funeral home and said, one of my families is in Texas, they passed away. What are your price structures so I can talk to the family on what is going to work best for them? Keep in mind too, when you have pre-funded your funeral, say you pre-funded your funeral with Savannah up here, we can use some of the money out of that to help pay to get the body back because we're not picking it up. We take our pickup fee and pay that other funeral home. And funeral homes are really good about trying to stay with, especially if you've been conscientious enough to pre-plan and pre-fund, they really try to stay within those financial parameters if at all possible.
Any other questions?
This is great, you guys. This is awesome. Anybody out there?
A question here.
Go ahead.
This is Bob Angelisi. I'm asking about donating a body to the University of Iowa Medical School. How is that managed?
Correct. Correct. Is there?
I'm gonna, sorry, I
You're
keep
fine.
adding to it.
But
What-
you,
Okay,
Oh.
so her question was, with an irrevocable, if it's past the 30 days, you know, the first 30 days, then you cannot cancel it. The reason being, you guys, and I always have said this, a really good rule of thumb is whatever money you guys have that you can touch, like an annuity or a life insurance policy that you can cash in. If you can turn something into cash and put it in your hand, if you can touch it, the county and state can touch it. So know that. So on an irrevocable account, because you cannot touch it, the county and state cannot touch it. That also allows you to have the flexibility of movement. It allows you the higher interest for whatever high interest is. It allows it to be tax-free and fully protected because it's in this locked account. So keep in mind, that is a good thing that it's in an irrevocable account because that's why it's the only thing that is protected. So if you can touch it, they can touch it, and I'll guarantee you they will.
There's a question online, Alice.
Hi. Are you looking at me? No.
Oh, okay,
So
great.
we'll have Bob Angelisi, you can ask your question.
Hi. This is
Bob Angelisi.
Angelisi.
You can ask your question.
Okay, okay, I'm online. The question is, what's the procedure if one plans to donate one's body to the University of Iowa Medical School?
Yes.
Repeat the question.
So Bob wants to know what the procedure would be to donate your body to a medical school. I think he said the University of Iowa, for example. I just had a couple of weeks ago a family that had called in and wanted to do the same thing. Truly, it's a matter of filling out some paperwork to see if, number one, that they will accept you. And from there, you send the documentation in. And if you're accepted, they would give you a little card that says so. However, at the time of one's passing, that is when they really decide, you know, if they can use your body at that time for research. We do have a fee on our general price list that we can arrange if that's something that you want to do. However, it's not uncommon for people to also prepare for services. And you can do services, with that being said, prior to your body being donated to science. And without going into all that, it's essentially a light embalming and whatnot.
Someone just asked, can you just donate a brain?
I can answer.
I think so.
Yes, so I live up by Rochester by the Mayo Clinic. So we have, can you hear? Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. They asked if you could donate just a brain, okay? So like I was just saying, I live right up by the Mayo Clinic. We have huge Alzheimer's studies, and yes, when you do a brain donation, people, all of us picture them like, I don't know, taking the top of your head off and taking the whole brain out. They actually take like the size of a dime to a quarter out of the back. You can have a full viewing and nobody knows any different. So yes, you can do that. I want to hop back to this thing about body donation, because again, Mayo Clinic is heavy duty into body donation. The thing I want you to really understand what Savannah said is at the time of your passing, even though you've been accepted by the University of Iowa or Mayo Clinic or whoever, there is not a guarantee that they will take you. It is vitally important that you do a plan B. And when you sit down with Savannah, we list plan A is body donation, but plan B, you need to make arrangements. So like, for example, because this is getting more popular, a lot of the universities and Mayo Clinic, when we call and say, okay, we have a donor, they're like, we have enough right now, thank you very much, but we're good. And then we have to turn back to the family and go, okay, what would you like to do? So make sure you have a plan B in place, because a lot of the kids are like, wait, what? What do we do? So we need to now get a cremation, and what do we do with the cremains and all that type of thing. So that is where it's very, very important. Know that even if you're accepted, it is not a guarantee at the time of your passing that they will take you. Yes, sir.
What happens to the remains after research?
Cremated.
Go ahead and you finish.
Yeah, so great
Excellent
question. He had asked what happens to your remains once they're finished with all their research. So I believe usually it's about a year that they do all their research on you. And then after that, they would then cremate you and then call your loved one and make arrangements to have you picked up.
And I think that the different schools have their own ceremony.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. She had just mentioned that different schools have different ceremonies on how they do that.
So Alice Thompson has a question.
Alice Thompson, you can go ahead and ask her question.
It's more of a comment. We made these arrangements, 15 or 20 years ago. And at that point, we were going to do, we chose our caskets and outlined basically the service and what we wanted done. But we felt very strongly that there should be something for the family to do in closing. So we didn't choose, we chose our cemetery lot, but we did not choose stones, markers. And when we needed it, my daughters and I did that. But in the meantime, there was a change in attitude about cremation. And at the time we needed it, and we had checked on this in advance, that could we switch from the casket to cremation? And yes, we could do that when the time came. We couldn't do it ahead of time, but we could do it when the time came. And we did that. And it worked out very nicely for everyone. And the family had a part in it. But we had the basics done.
Want to reiterate that?
Yeah.
And they were. knew
Alice
where
just
to go
shared
from
with
there.
that, her family, they had set up pre-arrangements about 15 years ago. Is that right, Alice? Am I saying that
15 or
right?
20 years ago, yes.
Um,
It's been a long
And
time.
she appreciated the flexibility of the funeral home because through those 15 years, their thoughts and wishes had changed. And they waited to maybe design the stone. And so her and her daughters designed the stone. But then also, you know, they maybe wanted to look at cremation at the time of the passing. But that's the beauty of pre-arranging. And Alice, I really appreciate those comments because this is all for you. All of this is for you. The pre-arranging, the pre-funding, the flexibility, and that's what it is to make it easier for you. And absolutely, nowadays too, if you do want to change your wishes, you actually can even do that ahead of time. And Savannah can change notes in your file, that type of thing too. So thank you, Alice. I appreciate, you know, that you bring to light and we reiterate that you are in control of your arrangements and you can do whatever you want, make any changes you want.
Go ahead.
After cremation, what are the options for presentation of the ashes? A brown bag or a stone cross?
So
Anything you want.
he was wondering, once you're cremated, what are your options for presentation? It's truly your choice. You know, we obviously have the urns at the funeral home, but we've also put people in Folgers coffee cans.
So it's, yeah.
It's absolutely your preference. Make it your own, make it creative.
Highly grocery.
Any other questions? Maggie, do you see anybody?
Herb Harmison might have a question.
Herb, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, a simple one. I think I know the answer. The question is, are the prices for all funeral homes public information without more than just a simple request?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Funeral homes, we have what we call a general price list. Every funeral home legally has to have a printed general price list that at any time you can call in or walk in and request that. They have to give you one. And the easiest way to describe it is I say it's a menu of every possible cost that could come out of the building. So when you get this price list, sometimes it's really long or pages and pages. It can create more questions than answers. But if you get one from Adams or any of their funeral homes, Savannah can help you navigate through that. But yes, absolutely, that is public knowledge and it has to be given to you at any time you request it.
Thank you.
There's a question on the chat.
Have the laws?
Oh, yes. Oh.
The laws changed so that family have to follow. your
Okay,
wishes.
so the next question is, have the laws changed so that family have to follow your wishes? Ooh, this is a really good one, you guys. If you're married and you pass away, your spouse trumps everybody. Even if it's so, for example, I married a gentleman 3 years ago that has 3 children. Even though they're his biological children, as his wife, I trump them in any decisions. Now, yes, a spouse can change what they want to do. When you're pre-arranged and pre-funded, 98% of the time, people do not change that, okay? But legally, yes, they can.
Oh, is purchase of burial plot part of the plan?
Okay. What is it?
Is purchase?
Oh,
of-
is purchase of burial lot part of the plan? It sure can be. If you prefer not to go pick something out ahead of time, you can add extra money into your irrevocable funeral trust and have the family pick that out at the time. Or you can go to the cemetery and pick it out and pay for it yourself ahead of time. Keep in mind, if you put it inside the irrevocable funeral trust, we don't have any, you know, that price could go up and probably will. But once you purchase a burial plot, it's that price, and then obviously it's not gonna change. It's whatever you're most comfortable with.
I just want to add to that. I've worked with numerous cemeteries around the community, so I would be more than happy to help you get in contact with people as well.
What do you do with Iowa State University? They have a cemetery.
Yep. So she had asked what we do with Iowa State and the Iowa State Cemetery. So, you know, in the event that somebody wants to, whether it's in my situation, pre-arranging, if they want to be buried in there, there's kind of a few loopholes we have to get through. It's kind of tough nowadays, if I'm correct in speaking, that, you know, you have to reach a certain criteria to be able to be buried in that cemetery, but we have contact information that we can get into contact to make sure that you qualify for all of the restrictions and whatnot. Any other?
What is Savannah's business phone number?
Great question. So
Say, repeat it.
this gentleman wants to know my phone number. Okay, ready? Everybody got their pens ready? 712 371 3120.
Business cards in all of this.
I'm gonna repeat that one more time for you. So 712 371 3120. And for those of you that got folders, there should have been a business card in there. I think I have a few more here.
Yeah, we'll
too.
leave some too.
Yeah.
If you guys.
But, oh, you sent it to the chat. Great.
Oh,
So
thank
everybody
you.
on Zoom. Yep. Very good. Any other questions? We really appreciate being here. Today was awesome. Thank you for having us.
Thank
and
you so much.
All of the questions were great.
And it's so fun to be able to come see you in person
Yes,
again.
we're so
Yay!
excited to be here in person.
Thank you so much, you guys. Beautiful place
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you, and if anybody does any other questions, I'm sure I'd be happy to answer them personally. Just come on down if you have more.
Come down.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks, Jerry.
Wonderful.